I recorded an entire video and my camera ran out of battery halfway through and saved none of it, so I'm doing this over again. So today I'm going to be talking about books about two women that have inspired me generally and specifically. One throughout my degree and the other in the way that I think and feel and identify. Susan Sontag is a philosopher, she is a feminist, and I'm going to say bisexual, but I will clarify that later, but I'm pretty sure that's how she described herself. Diane Arbus was a photographer who focused on people and their representation, their identity. So these two women were both very focused on people and the way that they form their personalities. So I'm going to talk about Susan Sontag first. I still have all my bookmarks from various times that I read this book, and each of these mark how far I got. I don't know why I just didn't use the same bookmark. These are her early diaries between 1947 and 1963. They're compiled by her son, who found them after she died in her walk-in closet, and they were sold to the University of California. He writes, "And the agreement was that they would go there upon her death, along with her papers and her books, as they have. And since the contract my mother concluded did not restrict access in any important sense, I soon came to feel that the decision had been made for me. Either I would organise them and present them, or someone else would. It seemed better to go forward." So Susan Sontag wrote these diaries for herself, never intending them to be read by anyone else. So then reading these diaries feels like this extreme invasion of privacy, but at the same time it's this amazing insight into the way that this particular woman thought, her relationships, her opinions on the culture at the time. So I think they're invaluable, particularly for me. She writes about love, relationships, sex, sexuality, culture, philosophy, and it's just fascinating. This person who's fairly well known, a great media critic, and it really humanizes her in a way that I think a lot of famous people don't get humanized. I think especially in this day and age, when we have the culture of celebrity, it's very difficult to look at them and think, well, they have struggles they feel as intensely as I do. And when you read a personal diary like this, it makes it apparent that, you know, most people have these intense feelings and most people have these intense worries, but that you are only capturing a glimpse of their life. I'm trying to find the passage that I had before, and I'm really annoyed that I cannot find it. "I intend to do everything, to have one way of evaluating experience. Does it cause me pleasure or pain? And I shall be very cautious about rejecting the painful. I shall anticipate pleasure everywhere, and find it too, for it is everywhere. I shall involve myself wholly, everything matters. The only thing I resign is the power to resign, to retreat, the acceptance of sameness in the intellect. I am alive, I am beautiful, what else is there?" So there's moments like that in the diaries, and then moments of completely the opposite, and I just find that contrast so interesting. So secondly, I want to talk about Diane Arbus, who was quite a great inspiration for me when I was doing my photography degree, and the way that she looks at people and the way that she rejects beauty standards of the time, and she's really quite controversial in her work. She is concerned a lot with identity and identifying within a society, or whether you identify outside of it, and the kind of communities that are created outside of what is thought of as acceptable society. This book describes her life, her work, and all the struggles that she came up against, especially against mental illness, which was quite close to my heart. This book goes into some great detail. Parts of it are written by her daughter Doon, and it includes a lot of her photographs and her work. Let me give you an example. There are these pages that are really interesting that encompass several things like collages. It's really interesting to look at how they've decided to edit the letters and the diaries and the photos together. Here's another page that I really like. The other thing is that this book goes into great detail about her life and her work and her relationships. It also goes into great detail about her death. And in fact, the last thing that's written in the chronology is an autopsy report. And obviously that's quite clinical to read after you've read about, you know, her life and her thoughts and all of this amazing work that she did. And the book goes on to describe how she worked and the way that she produced her photos, but the last thing you hear about her life and her death is this report. And for me it felt very strange. I think talking about death and including that kind of detail in this chronology, Diane Arbus was one of these people to bring out the reality of life and to never shy away from it, so I think it's kind of fitting that that's almost how it ends. I would recommend this book if anyone wants to know more about Diane Arbus or her work. So you've heard me talk about 2 books about women that have really inspired me. If you have any suggestions of books that you think I would like, please do not hesitate to suggest them in the comments, and I would be really excited to read your recommendations. Until future videos, bye!